Broke single dad shelters a mysterious girl. He had no idea she was a millionaire's daughter. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. Rain pounded the roof like a relentless drumbeat. Inside a cramped, dim apartment, David hunched over a flickering lamp, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. The wallpaper peeled, the heater wheezed, and the only sound beyond the storm was his son's labored breathing. Liam, no more than 6, lay curled beneath a patched quilt on the worn-out sofa. His cheeks flushed with fever, his cough deep and dry. David gently dabbed a cool cloth on the boy's forehead, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Medicine was running low. Food, even lower. He'd already skipped dinner. On the table, overdue bills stared back at him like silent threats. Job offers were non-existent. His toolbox sat in the corner gathering dust, much like his old life. Before the accident, before he lost everything except Liam. Just as David began settling down for a sleepless night, a sharp knock cut through the silence. He froze. It was almost midnight. Cautiously, he approached the door. Another knock. Urgent. He opened it a sliver and saw her. A girl, soaked to the skin, shivering in the icy rain. Her hair clung to her face, eyes wide with fear and desperation. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Just one night. I've got nowhere else." David hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution. He didn't know her. She could be dangerous. But then he looked past the fear and saw what she was hiding. Sheer vulnerability. A lost girl with no umbrella, no bag, no shoes. Just trembling limbs and silent pleading. He stepped aside. "Come in." She entered quietly, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. David handed her an old towel and gestured to the couch. "It's not much," he muttered, "but it's dry." She gave a faint nod and sank into the cushions. Her name, she said, was Emily. Nothing more. No last name. No story. Her eyes avoided his, yet darted often to the sleeping child. David didn't press. He poured her a cup of lukewarm tea, the last in the kettle. She held it with both hands, as though afraid it might vanish. The room fell into an uneasy silence. David returned to Liam's side. Emily watched them both with a mix of curiosity and something else, longing, maybe. The storm howled outside, but inside was still. Two strangers, each carrying burdens too heavy for words, now sharing the same space. He didn't ask her why she was out there. She didn't ask why he looked so worn down. But something passed between them, a quiet understanding. David lay down on the floor near Liam, as he always did. Emily curled up on the couch, still clutching the towel like armor. The night stretched on, thick with unspoken questions and the hum of shared pain. And though neither of them knew it yet, that single act of compassion, one door opened, was about to change everything. The morning light crept through cracked blinds, casting a faint warmth over the cluttered apartment. Steam rose from a dented kettle as David stirred instant oatmeal in a chip bowl. Beside him, Emily moved quietly, measuring spoons with care, watching his every move as if unsure where she belonged in this unfamiliar calm. Liam stirred, his fever broken, his smile shy as he spotted Emily. She greeted him with a gentle wave and sat beside him on the floor, handing him a spoon. They didn't speak much, but the way she helped him steady his grip, how she listened when he mumbled about his dream, said more than words. David, meanwhile, sat hunched at the table, an ancient laptop before him. Each click was met with disappointment. Application after application, no responses, no callbacks. His resume was clean, but the gap in his work history screamed louder than his skills. The injury had robbed him not only of mobility, but also of pride. His wife's sudden illness had taken the rest. Emily said nothing. She simply observed. The limp in his walk. The wedding photo turned face down. The way he gave Liam the larger portion of breakfast without blinking. There was no bitterness in his silence, only a quiet endurance she didn't understand. "Don't you want some?" She finally asked, nodding toward the bowl. David shrugged. "I'm good." He needs it more. He said it like it was normal. Like hunger was a routine he had come to accept. Emily blinked, unsure what to make of it. In her world, favors came with conditions. Even kindness was a currency measured, weighed, often withheld. But here was a man who had nearly nothing, giving what little he had without expectation. As the day wore on, she helped Liam draw spaceships on torn paper. She swept the floor when David stepped outside to take a call, another rejection. She folded his laundry, careful not to wrinkle the threadbare shirts. There was a strange peace in the simplicity. No one asked about her past. No one demanded explanations. And that, somehow was more disarming than questions. That evening, as the apartment settled into quiet again, David leaned back on the couch and sighed. Liam was asleep, breathing evenly. The rain had passed. The night air was still. Emily slipped out the front door, barefoot. She walked to the edge of the street, pulled a sleek phone from her pocket, one of the few things she hadn't discarded, and dialed. It rang once, twice. A man's voice answered. Emily. She froze. A breath caught in her throat. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She didn't speak, just stood there, the words trapped somewhere between fear and longing. Then she hit end call. Silence returned. She looked back at the apartment window, where a soft yellow glow spilled onto the sidewalk. The warmth inside wasn't luxury, it wasn't even comfortable, but it was honest. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough. She turned around and walked back in. Days passed, and Emily became a quiet rhythm in their small world. She moved through the apartment with purpose. Dusting shelves no one noticed, sweeping corners long ignored, and scrubbing the stove until it gleamed like something new. She never waited to be asked. She simply did. David noticed her initiative but said little. He didn't know how to respond to someone like her. She wasn't intrusive, but she wasn't just passing through either. Liam, on the other hand, adored her. He followed her like a shadow, eager to help fold laundry or stir pots of soup with too much water and not enough seasoning. She laughed at his jokes, even when they didn't land, and told him stories about cities she'd visited, though she left out how she got there. David watched, at first with quiet appreciation, then with subtle doubt. Something didn't add up. The way she spoke, refined, measured, belied the life of a drifter. Her fingers were free of calluses, her nails clean and shaped, not the hands of someone used to hard travel or sleeping rough. Her posture, her vocabulary, the way she handled herself in silence, it all pointed to a different kind of upbringing. He started to ask, gently at first, where was she from? Did anyone know she was here? Her answers danced around the truth. Nowhere, really, she'd say. Or, I needed to get away. One afternoon, she fixed the faucet that had dripped for months. David returned from the corner store to find her on the floor, wrench in hand, water turned off at the valve. He stared at her, half amused, half impressed. Didn't think you'd know how to do that, he muttered. She shrugged. I watched a lot of videos. He chuckled, but part of him didn't buy it. That night, after putting Liam to bed, David went to retrieve a blanket from the hall closet. Emily's duffel bag had been moved, partially unzipped. A glint caught his eye. He crouched, hesitated, then reached in. A watch. But not just any watch, sleek, gold-trimmed, the kind no wanderer could afford. The face bore a designer crest he recognized from a magazine ad once. He held it for a moment, heart tightening, then tucked it back exactly as he found it. He didn't mention it. Not yet. But something shifted. The next morning, he wasn't quite as relaxed. He caught himself studying her when she laughed, trying to read between her smiles. She noticed. The warmth in her voice dimmed. Her sentences shortened. The trust she'd allowed to blossom began to retreat. She wasn't unkind, just distant. And David, torn between suspicion and gratitude, didn't know whether to be more afraid of what she might have done or of what he might lose if she disappeared. Trust, once given freely, now hung between them like fog. Neither one spoke of it, but both felt it. And just like that, the fragile piece they had built began to quietly tremble. The television droned softly in the background, barely audible over the rattle of Liam's toy cars on the floor. David wasn't watching. He was wiping down the kitchen counter, lost in thought. Emily sat nearby, quietly folding laundry, her focus unusually intense. The silence between them had grown more noticeable, filled with things unsaid. Then the anchor's voice changed tone, urgent, breaking. Authorities continue their search for Emily Caldwell, the missing daughter of billionaire Richard Caldwell. Last seen near downtown 4 days ago, David turned. On screen, a photo appeared. Polished, smiling. Hairstyled, designer dress. A younger version of the girl in his apartment, but unmistakable. The jawline, the eyes. His rag slipped from his hand. Emily froze. Her face drained of color. For a moment, she didn't breathe. Then, slowly, she rose, met his eyes, and said only one word. I can explain. But she couldn't, not really. Not with logic. Not with facts. The wall she'd built buckled under the weight of exposure. She didn't run, though. She stayed and faced it. I wasn't kidnapped. I left on my own, she said, voice shaking. I couldn't breathe in that world. Every step, every word, every photo, it was all controlled. Even my future was already planned. I I wanted to know what it felt like to live without everyone watching. David stood motionless. The woman who'd helped raise his spirits, played with his son, shared his meals, was the same name whispered on headlines and news tickers across the country. The betrayal was quiet but sharp. You lied, he said, more stunned than angry. Emily nodded. I did, but not about who I am here. This was real. The meals. The laughter. Liam. You. All of it. Silence stretched thin. Liam, still playing, looked up. Is Emily still my friend? His voice pierced the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. David looked down at his son, then back at Emily. The instinct to protect flared in him, but it wasn't aimed at keeping her out. It was aimed at shielding what they'd built. You can't stay hidden forever, David said slowly. But I won't turn you in. Not if you promise me one thing. Emily braced herself. Stay safe. No more disappearing into the night. You don't have to go back now, but you can't keep running either. Tears welled in her eyes. Not from fear, but from relief. I promise, she whispered. David didn't smile. He didn't hug her. But he sat down across from her and poured her a cup of tea, just like he did that first night. The atmosphere shifted. Not back to what it was, but into something new. Unspoken truths now lay between them, exposed but not weaponized. Emily wasn't just a girl on the run anymore. And David wasn't just a man surviving the day. Now, they were both people learning how to trust again. Openly, honestly, and with the scars to show for it. The low rumble of tires on gravel broke the morning stillness. David glanced out the window and tensed. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop outside the complex, its windows tinted, its presence unmistakably out of place. Seconds later, two men in suits stepped out, scanning the building like they already knew exactly where to go. Then came the knock. Firm. Intentional. David opened the door slowly. Behind the suited men stood a tall, commanding figure in a dark overcoat, Richard Caldwell. His gaze was ice, his posture unbending. This was a man who'd built empires and crushed obstacles without raising his voice. Where is she? He asked, not wasting breath on introductions. Emily appeared behind David, calm but unflinching. Her expression was unreadable, but her fists were clenched at her sides. You shouldn't be here, she said. And you shouldn't be here either, Richard snapped. You've made your point. Now pack your things. David stepped aside, giving father and daughter space, but stayed close enough to intervene. I'm not a child, Emily said firmly. I'm not property. You don't get to drag me back just because you're uncomfortable with where I've been. Richard's jaw tightened. This place is unsuitable. That word lingered in the air, sharp and dismissive. Emily squared her shoulders. You mean poor? David said nothing. He didn't have to. The peeling walls and flickering ceiling light said enough. But Richard wasn't listening until he took a step inside. His eyes scanned the modest apartment. A child's drawing on the fridge. A small stack of canned food. A toolbox tucked into the corner. Liam peeked out from the bedroom, curious but cautious. Something flickered in Richard's expression. Disapproval faltered. Pity didn't replace it, but something more complex did. David approached calmly. I didn't know who she was when she showed up. I just saw someone who needed help. That's all I've given her. That, and respect. There was no groveling in his tone. No apology. Just truth. Richard studied him. A man with no money, no status, yet standing there like an equal. I'd like a word with you, he said finally. They stepped outside. No one knows exactly what was said, only that when they returned, Richard's stance had softened. His anger remained, but the edge had dulled. He looked at his daughter, this stubborn, fiery version of the girl he'd raised in marble halls and gold-framed expectations. You can stay, he said slowly, for now. Emily blinked, surprised. But when you return, he added, I expect it to be because you choose to. A silence fell. Not cold, but tentative. Emily nodded. Thank you. Without another word, Richard turned and left, his men following. The SUV pulled away as quietly as it had come. David closed the door, exhaling deeply. You okay? He asked. Emily didn't answer right away. She just looked around the room, the place that had become her unlikely refuge, and smiled faintly. I will be. The chill of winter faded into gentler days. Life, once stuck in survival mode, began to move again, not in leaps, but in quiet, steady steps. David's hands were back under hoods and engines. A reputable garage on the north end had taken him on after a glowing recommendation he hadn't asked for. Richard Caldwell never mentioned it, never even called. But the business card David had found slipped into his mailbox said enough. He worked long hours, but came home standing taller. Grease under his fingernails, a faint oil stain on his shirt. He wore them like a badge. The clink of tools, the rhythm of routine, it all felt like home again. Not the one he lost, something better. Liam had his backpack slung over one shoulder, his lunchbox in hand, bouncing with excitement each morning. New shoes. Not flashy, just strong. A box of pencils he showed off like treasure. School meant friends, stories, and growth. And David, once worried he was failing his son, now saw a boy beginning to flourish. Emily didn't disappear. She came often, sometimes with books for Liam, other times just to sit and talk. She had a car now, one she drove with tentative confidence. She'd enrolled in a course for nonprofit development, her focus sharp, her vision clearer. She no longer lived in the shadows of a mansion or behind a last name. She lived in the moment, in purpose. One Saturday afternoon, the smell of grilled meat drifted from the small backyard behind David's apartment. The space was nothing fancy, folding chairs, a mismatched table, paper plates stacked beside a cooler of lemonade. But laughter echoed there, full and unfiltered. Liam chased bubbles across the grass. David manned the grill, spatula in hand, flipping burgers like a seasoned chef. Emily leaned against the fence, sipping soda, her face flushed from the sun, her smile easy and real. Neighbors stopped by. A mechanic from David's shop. A teacher from Liam's school. It wasn't a party by any polished standard, but it was theirs. As the sky turned amber and shadows stretched longer, Emily knelt to hug Liam goodbye. He clung a little tighter than usual. "Will you come back soon?" he asked. "Always," she promised. David walked her to the curb, where her car waited. She opened the door, then turned back. "You gave me more than a roof," she said. "You gave me space to be myself." He nodded, the words sticking somewhere behind his ribs. "And you," he said quietly, "gave us a new chapter." She smiled, slid into the driver's seat, and drove off with the window down, wind tangling her hair. David stood for a moment longer, arms folded, gaze steady. He'd opened the door for a stranger once. A single act with no plan, no promise. Now, as Liam's laughter echoed behind him and the grill hissed softly, he understood. That night, just one night, had rewritten the future. Not just for her. For all of them. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Mention the names David, Emily, and little Liam. What did you think of their journey? Would you have opened your door that stormy night? Do you believe one act of kindness can truly change lives? Your feedback helps us bring you more inspiring stories that touch the heart and stay with you long after the video ends. We can't wait to hear from you. See you in the next one.